So welcome to Austin on Rails. It's August. Thank you guys for coming out. There's seats. Sit. I am emceeing this evening. I am not speaking. So if you're like, oh God, not this guy again, no worries. I'm going to go sit down. If you were thinking, oh man, I hope he's speaking again, then you obviously didn't see me speak last time. So my name is Anthony Lewis. You all know me. You can call me Tony. If I owe you money, call me Anthony. I work for this company called ShareThrough. I'm team lead now. We're here in Austin at WeWork. We are hiring. We'll get to that later. I've been coming here for a long time. I don't know. I've been using Rails also a long time. So now, this is when we say, does anyone have any announcements? And I'm going to make some announcements. And then if you have any announcements, you can raise your hand and shout them out. So first off, Lone Star RubyConf was August 15th, and it was a lot of fun. Who all went to that? Anybody? Look at that. Brandon, you got nothing to worry about. Okay. There were some really good speakers there. Like Dave Thomas was there. Hefty Graham was there. This guy, Brandon Hayes, gave a talk. It was a great talk. I loved it. He has graciously agreed to come to here and give the talk again with some adjustments. October 23rd is Keep Ruby Weird. Somehow they have not sold out yet, so go buy a ticket to that because it's really good. This year RubyConf is in San Antonio, November 15th to the 17th. Tickets on sale now. 3 days of talks. Should be a lot of fun. San Antonio, not that far.
For that is still open too. So
really,
yes, more submissions please from people. Even if you think you don't have a cool talk idea, please submit it. The reviewers are really awesome about giving good feedback. So if you have anything you're remotely interested in sharing, it's open for a few more days.
Awesome, awesome. And the other thing that everyone always mentions here is Austin RB, first Monday of the month. I think they meet here. They meet here, over there.
Might be over there, I'm not sure.
Okay. I don't go to that one, and I feel terrible about that. But you know, job, kids, stuff. Anyone else? Announcements. I am open for anything. At least sort of semi-Ruby related. Okay, good. So, housekeeping stuff. Restrooms, out that door, take a right. Look for the sign that looks like a restroom sign. That leads you to the restrooms. Thanks to Capital Factory, as always, for letting us use this space. This month, thanks to Hired, the pizza you were eating, they paid for, and even though like the place didn't deliver, went above and beyond and found us another place. Rounders doesn't deliver anymore. So there's that. And also, after the meeting, we will go over to Beely Rallies, and there's going to be some other adult beverages there that they have paid for. So there's that. So here's how this thing works. We got two talks. First talk is Ben Brumfield. He's going to tell us all about freelance and how we're all going to go freelance. So starting tomorrow, I'm quitting my job after this talk. So I'm looking forward to that. Then we're going to take a little break, and I'm going to say who's hiring and who's looking. And all of us that are trying to hire people are going to cry softly over here somewhere. And everyone who's looking is going to come up to the front and tell us how much they're worth. Then speaker number 2, Brandon Hayes. He's going to give a great talk. After that, as I said, we'll go to BD Rallies. So, let's see.
We'll do a raffle in the middle.
Raffle in the middle. I wasn't going to mention the raffle because I don't want people to enter. Because this is a box from Hired, and I want to win it this time. You can ask Annie about it. She'll tell you. It's a pretty sweet deal. Pretty sweet deal. I guess. Do you want to say anything before we get started? I mean, you're sponsoring the whole thing. You're free to speak whenever.
Yeah.
The mic?
I don't like microphones. I'm loud enough without it. I'm Amanda. I'm the talent advocate for Hired. Has anyone heard of Hired before? Okay, like 50%. Awesome. So we're a marketplace designed to help engineers find a job that they'll love. Hopefully that's through our marketplace, but sometimes it's not the case. We're roughly like newish to Austin, probably been here for a couple months now. But the idea is to have a transparent, fast, and easy job search. You'll get to see a bunch of companies all at once, and salaries disclosed up front, so you can decide whether or not you want to have a conversation with that company right off the bat. But yeah, that's it. If you guys have questions about how the marketplace works, let me know. There's a couple people that have used it in the room before. But yeah, we're actually looking for a lot of Rails engineers to be on the marketplace. There's some demand for it for senior engineers, and you just need more. So if you're in the market or just want to see what's out there, it's a good way to kind of see what's in the marketplace and try to figure out if you want to get a job or not.
So tell everyone what they get if they get a job through Hired.
So we're a candidate-focused marketplace. We're not like an agency, and so I don't collect a commission off of like whether or not you get a job through the marketplace. Because we don't do that kind of crap, we give a lot of incentives back to the candidates that use our marketplace. So in that box that we're raffling off is a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne. And everyone that gets a job through our marketplace gets that, plus a 2K signing bonus from us as a thanks for using our platform. You can also earn a bunch of rewards if you invite friends to the marketplace. We've done like Virgin Airline vouchers, like Bose headphones. I think we gave away like tickets to ACL Coachella, all different kinds of things depending on how many people you referred and if they get hired. Oh, if you get a friend hired through the marketplace, you get your 2K signing bonus plus their 2K signing bonus, so it's double the money. Yeah.
What about the Dom Perignon?
Once per job, yeah.
So yeah, the champagne is in there, the $2,000 is not. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You are welcome to bring champagne every month if you would like. So with that, we will ask Ben Brumfield to come on up. Tell us about yourself, sir. Can you hold the mic and work the laptop at the same time?
We will find out.
We will find out. There you go.
Hello everyone, I'm Ben Brumfield. I'm a consultant and a Rubyist. And I wanted to give a beginner talk about just sort of a view behind the scenes in my very first freelance project, the one that allowed me to quit my day job and sort of pursue my passions for paint. At the end of the talk, hopefully you'll either know how to start into the freelancing market or decide you absolutely want no part of it. Mainly, I'm going to tell a lot of stories about the things that I messed up. And so if I'm up here sounding like a doofus, that's sort of the goal. Please be gentle. But we managed to ship the project anyway at the end of it. A little bit about the structure of the talk, because this is a beginner talk, but because it's a Rails talk, kind of wanted to go back and forth a little bit between the technical side and the business side of the project. So let's get started. So what was the first freelancing project that I worked on? This dream project. So I'm a history nerd and a bit of a genealogist, and I got a job taking things like this. This is a register of burials from 1684 and 1685 in a church in England somewhere. So there's an organization called Free UK Genealogy that's devoted to putting this kind of material online for free and freely searchable databases. And all of this material is transcribed and entered by volunteers. Well, so how do you actually make this searchable? Well, so they have this search tool that they built sometime in the mid-90s. And they really wanted to bring it into the 21st century, I suppose. So my job was essentially, my first deliverable was taking this and turning it into this, which is a rewritten from the ground up, fully responsive tool and search engine that's designed for genealogical records, that is based on Rails and MongoDB and is entirely open source. So this is really a dream for me, being able to do open source development within old history and old documents. Man, this is fantastic. So how did I get this? Well, So there was a Rails repository that interested me, and one evening I watched it, and the next morning I got mail saying, I noticed your Twitter profile says you develop software for nonprofits for a living and work on genealogy software for fun. How would you like a job building genealogy software? That's it. That's all. Easy, right? Well, so that's not actually the case, right? That is what happened. But the way that I got the job was through specialization, right? Specialization, finding a niche in this marketplace, and it was a passion niche for me. Usually when we talk about specialization, we're talking about technical specialization. I'm an expert on Ember.js or React.js. So what are my specialties? I know Oracle pretty well. I've been working with it since the 90s. I now know NoSQL. I'm okay at Ruby on Rails. I've been messing around with it for 10 years now, but I'm not awesome. So are these my specializations? No, not really. This is what I'm good at. This is my specialization. I specialize in a specific problem domain, which is taking handwritten material and allowing people to edit it and transform it into text. So this is not a super common domain, but it's really important for libraries, for historians, for archives, for people in the natural sciences, anybody who's working with that. So the way that I became a specialist in this, and the way that I was sort of found by these people, 10 years ago I started building a tool for transcribing my great-great-grandmother's diaries. In 2007, I started blogging about it and just talking about the experience of writing that software in public and reviewing interesting articles I read, competitor software, things like that. In 2008, I attended an unconference and presented a little bit of what I've been working on. Some people were pretty excited, and then and I also made some really good connections there with people in that field of people doing what's called digital humanities, which is sort of this little specialty. I hosted a unconference in the same genre, attracting the same people, here in Austin in 2009. And one thing leads to another, right? You start work on something, you blog about it, you attend some unconferences. In 2011, I spoke at the Museum Computer Network with Perry and Sully on a project using my software at the San Diego Natural History Museum. And then when I got that email offering me the job doing freelance, that day I was speaking at the American Historical Association to a group of scholars on exactly this as part of a big panel. This is how I became specialized. So what are the results of that? I got a freelance gig. Things have really built on each other. At this point, I'm getting emails like this pretty regularly. So there's people who contact me and say, we want to launch a crowdsourced manuscript transcription project, and looking into it, it turns out that this is a really hard thing to wrap our head around. Can we just pay you to tell us what to do? I found your name online, and somebody wrote about things you did. I looked you up, stuff on your blog, which is just a blogger blog. It looks terrible. Wow, can you come in on this project with us? Please can you come help us out? So those are sort of the results of that kind of domain-based specialization. So what are the implications of this for you if you want to do this? Well, you could do like me and take something that you're doing for passion and put it online, make it searchable, let people know you're an expert, and let people know you're an expert not by just spewing a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily right, but by asking questions. Interviewing people who are in the field that you're passionate about. If it's not a passion project, but you're interested in really leveling up your own career, going independent, becoming a highly paid consultant, you can avoid less lucrative fields like, say, manuscript transcription, and find fields that are problem domains that are actual problems for businesses. If you look at, say, Patrick McKenzie, who posts on Hacker News a lot, He became a domain specialist on A/B testing, driving conversion for e-commerce sites, and on drip emails. There are other people who are specialists on customer onboarding. These are things that software companies have problems with and will gladly pay lots and lots of money to bring people on to help them solve. So, switching to the technical aspects of this. Let's talk a little bit about the data model. Let's talk what's under the hood on this project. So we've got all of these register entries of all these deaths and marriages and burials. Fundamentally, we're talking about three really important models. There's a user model, which is the person who transcribed and contributed. There's a place, and there's the actual register entries. But if you look at the numbers behind them, we have a handful of users. We've got about 50,000 places. We have 33 million register entries that are highly complex and highly variable. A marriage has brides and grooms. A burial could have all sorts of things going on. There are witnesses. It's kind of crazy. For a number of reasons, we went with MongoDB to store this, even though I've been a relational database person my whole career. And one of the reasons for that is that it has really good support for variable field collections. So collections like a table in Mongo, which meant that we could put marriages, baptisms, and burials all in the same collection. So a single search could find records across these disparate things. And it's extremely performant against these complex records. So you have these nice B-tree indexes that aren't just on obvious sort of surface level fields, they go deep, deep, deep within the actual document that you're storing within the record. There's some downsides. No joins, there's some other things later. So one of the reasons that we did that, one of the things that allowed us to do was to satisfy some of the unique requirements we had. Namely, our transcribers, the people doing data entry, were typing exactly what was written in these old manuscripts. The manuscripts contained a lot of abbreviations. So if someone named William died, the parish vicar would write down WM for William. Now we need to surface that to a researcher who's using a site searching for William. How do you do that without doing an insane sort of OR query? One of the things we were able to do was to use, basically to move all the complex logic out of the actual act of querying and into the search records themselves. So we took that WM and we were able to transform it into a derivative field just to be used for searching and just to be used for indexing, and expand it so that it would match both a search for WM and a search for William. This index applied against it, it works pretty nicely. Another example was people are looking for records in a given town, but maybe their ancestors moved around. So how do you find records near Brixton? At the time, MongoDB was second only to Postgres in their support for GIS queries. So we were able to georeference all of these places and then create nice 2D sphere indices on them. A word of caution. When we started presenting the search results of here are the places that we found near your location, we made the mistake of printing the distance from your location. So you were searching for Brixton, and we're showing 5 or 6 towns and saying this one is 2.68 miles away, this one is 3.45 miles away. We started getting lots of complaints from researchers saying, you said this was 3.6 miles away from each other, but I just looked at a map and they are 4 miles, right? This is not cool. So precision and accuracy are not the same thing. Fundamentally, we were building a record database, we were not building driving instructions, and even though the Earth is not actually spherical, we didn't need to correct for that. We just sort of dropped everything after the decimal point. Okay, another big challenge with this data model was searches for dates. Okay, so someone's searching for, show me all the records between 1601 and 1609. And the records that are entries, we need to match a record that is the 22nd of February, 1600, 1601. This is complicated. It's complicated because until 1652, New Year's Day was March 25th. It wasn't January 1st. So you went from December 31st of 1600 to January 1st, 1600, and just keep on going. So another example, you need to be able to find the record that is encoded as 25th of August, 1600. I can't read this letter. Okay, so how does MongoDB provide support for that? Well, really, you got to kind of wing it here, right? And the fact of the matter, this is very true in any kind of complicated dates, is that not every data type will be of use to you. There's a lot of cases in which, because a date time exists, that doesn't mean it actually serves your needs well. We used a particular variant of string format that worked well for our needs and wouldn't work for others, but it worked pretty well. So going back to the business and process side, let's talk a little bit about what worked and didn't work when it came to the process and the organization of the project. Can everybody hear me okay? I feel like the mic is sort of veering back and forth. Let's talk about what doesn't work. So we started off, there was the trustee of the nonprofit who was organizing all this, an extremely technical person who had written OpenSSL, was a cryptographer for Google. He was essentially controlling the purse strings and calling the shots with technical design. We have an executive director, and then we have a bunch of volunteer stakeholders. Those are people who are using the old system, and they are, for the most part, retired data processing people. They have been programming back in the 60s and 70s. They are now retired, but they're really into it. And then there's the developer. What really doesn't work is when the executive director is to be hired. So we have a trustee who's calling the shots, but when things like Heartbleed happen, he kind of has to go save the internet. And his day job doesn't give him a lot of free time to interact and communicate. Which means that I end up taking most of my marching orders from a mailing list of retired programmers who have strong opinions. And don't laugh, because 2 or 3 decades from now, this will be you, if you're lucky. It is really hard to have any sort of laser-like focus. It is really hard to have concrete priorities, and it is really hard to separate the development effort from the communication effort when this happens. And adding an extra developer doesn't help. I got a developer part-time through who was wonderful. Certainly working from home, I loved having a coworker. I also loved working with someone who had a lot of experience. This guy was a volunteer who had written his first program in 1959 on hand-assembled machine code on punch tape. And he could tell you why punch cards are better than punch tape, because if you want to correct your program, you don't have to use an X-Acto knife and literally cut and paste. Him having my back was wonderful, but we were still flailing. What actually worked was finally the organization hiring a new executive director, the executive director taking on all communication from the volunteer stakeholders and being our boss. Now, I had to give up a lot of autonomy to do that. It was so worth it. He also brought on a project manager. Why do we need a project manager? Let's talk about something else that doesn't work. Saying you're doing Agile, but actually cowboy coding. Saying, well, we don't need these formal process documents like you were used to in the 70s. We're doing Agile now. But then going off on your own and just sort of cranking out code and sometimes releasing it, sometimes not. I should say in my defense, and as a warning to you all, that I had worked for 8 years doing Scrum and before that XP with stand-ups with good process. So you'd think that I would know better. But when you go off on your own, part of the reason the process exists is that it's hard for people to communicate, and you need process and the artifacts of process for a large team to get things done. When I went off on my own, I didn't have that need anymore, because it was just me and I knew everything. And oof. What did work? Instituting bi-weekly scrums that actually had people attending who were stakeholders, and using Kanban boards backed by GitHub issues. Some wonderful tools out there for that. Okay, let me talk about something else that doesn't work. Hourly billing. Now, you'll hear this a lot if you listen to the Freelancers show, which is sponsored by Hired, and other things, where people will talk about switching over to daily billing or weekly billing. A lot of times they'll say the reason to do that is that you avoid this commoditized race to the bottom of somebody saying, well, you're $75 an hour, but this person is $60 an hour, so obviously I should go with them. And switching over to hourly or weekly sort of breaks you out of that. That's not the thing that I think is most important and the biggest killer about hourly billing. The biggest killer about hourly billing is that you have the option from minute to minute to decide what project or what client you're going to work on. If you want to work for 1 hour and then something comes up and you say, well, I'll just only bill them for that hour, then you have that option and it's guilt-free. What that means is that your executive function, the decision-making energy that you wake up with every morning, gets spent deciding what project to work on instead of deciding how to make the day's project work better and how to accomplish more in it. So I switched over from hourly billing to daily billing, which is actually the standard practice in the UK. And advanced scheduling. So I live and die by my calendar now. At the beginning of every month, or usually the end of the previous month, I plan out my entire next month's calendar with what projects I'm going to work on, what week, which clients I'm going to work on. And I'll also put together, here's the side projects I'm going to work on this other week. And the goal of that is to avoid thinking about the other things. If I'm working for this client one week, I know that I'm not working for these others. So I can just ignore them, right? It's really important. Back to the technical side. Let's talk about user-submitted forms. We talked about data model a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about forms. This is something I was planning on doing as a lightning talk. And I want to just propose something. Let's say you've got a search query, as you saw with the search screen. What should that do? Well, I didn't know. So I kind of goof around. How do I usually make a form? Well, I'm going to generate a model. I'll just generate a scaffold for a search query with the relevant fields, and it'll generate this for me. And then I'll edit the new and the form partial HTML. Well, it turns out this was not a mistake. This was a wonderful, wonderful thing. Having an artifact in your database of an important and complicated user action, even if it's not part of your models, even if it's not a business object you can think of, is a wonderful thing. Because we can do things like say, here's how long this query took to run. We can do things like say, well, here's exactly the query criteria this user used, and this is a long-running query, let's run an explain plan to find out why. We can support new functionality like remember this query, or poll every week to find out if new records match this query. There's a lot of performance enhancements we can have because we've got this thing to hang other data and other action off of. So for pagination or for sorting search results, we don't have to re-query the database every time that happens because the results of that first query are stored, at least their IDs are stored on that search query record. We did something similar with our user feedback forms. We have a lot of non-technical users. We have a lot of relatively technical users. We wanted some way of getting user bug reports and user feedback into the systems we were using, the Kanban boards, the GitHub issues, that didn't require people actually going to GitHub and creating issues. So we created a feedback form. The feedback object has an after save callback that uses OctoKit, which is GitHub's API, that posts a GitHub issue that automatically feeds into our Kanban board. We also have some tooling in the report a problem button that records things like refer URLs, the URL of the page that they're on. So when a user reports a problem, they click a button, they type what they think is wrong. They don't have to create a GitHub account, but suddenly in our Kanban board, in our incoming box, we have a report that has a direct link to the screen, the URL that they were on, just without them doing anything else. So it's pretty slick. Saving complex user management in the database is pretty awesome. So back to the business side. Priorities and deliverables, what works and what doesn't. So I'm a pretty technical back-end person. I'm a database guy. And certainly the trustee who I was working with, he's on the Apache Foundation board, all these kinds of things, another back-end person. And we said, well, what makes the most sense is to develop features in the order of data flow. So we're going to start with an administrative tool for managing these images that people work from, then we'll create an online transcription tool so that they can transcribe the images, and then we'll create the search database, and then at the end we'll take sort of the legacy data that the volunteers have produced already, and we'll ingest that. There was a rebellion among our volunteers. People hated it because what we told them was, first, you're not going to see anything for a year or more. No results of what you're doing. Second, the first actual result you'll see will be us coming in and telling you, stop doing things the way that you're doing and switch over to this new tool. And then at the end, the new website will be working. Okay, that was terrible. What does work? Deliver improvements that are visible, at least at a trickle, that are visible to the existing stakeholders. Once we developed the new search engine, the product really took off. The volunteers were energized, they could see things were happening, they got really excited, just the engagement was wonderful. So technically, look at a few more of these. Things that worked, things that didn't, and compromises we had to make. So we went through a long stage of development and production and load testing on test machines before we rolled our system out onto a production cluster. And to our horror, we discovered that the version of MongoDB we were running did not deal well with resource contention of other things running on the same system. Specifically, it had no idea what indexes to use. It would use just something random for every query. So what do? Do we upgrade to the new version of the database and go through full regression testing? We've announced that we're going to do this and ship it in Easter. And it's Good Friday at this point. What are we going to do? Well, sometimes you have to make compromises. One of the things that we discovered was that passing hints into the query engine still worked. If you can pass hints into the query engine and you know what indexes you have, and if you can parse out the queries that are being executed, you can, in a day or so, write your own little rule-based optimizer and get it working. This is a terrible code smell. You'd never do this. The right solution is to upgrade MongoDB and go through another phase of testing and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? This got this code released by Easter Monday instead. Okay, so we launched it. What was the result? We got lovely blog posts. People talk about the new look and the new functionality, all the things you could do now that you used to never be able to do. We just made the cover of Family Tree magazine, which if you were a retired genealogist in the UK, you would know about 32 million free parish registers. And so it's shipped. And it's done, and everyone seems to be happy, and I'm moving on to further engagements with the same clients for their census records. So I want to end with thanks, particularly to this community, to Austin on Rails, to Damon, to the Austin Tech people who have given me advice along the way and hosted meetings like this, because this really has been integral to living my dreams. I'd also like to thank my spouse and partner, Sarah, back there, who actually introduced me to Austin on Rails after she got involved in the very early days, and then turn it over to questions. And then we'll leave this up here. All of our code is open source, so if for some reason you too want to peek at our code and our hand-rolled cost-based optimizer, don't do this, then you have the chance. So are there any questions? Actually, I think you were first.
All right. When you talk about advanced billing, how accurate are you 30 days out, saying I'm going to be doing this on the 30th?
So I'm doing advanced scheduling, not advanced billing.
Scheduling, I'm sorry.
Scheduling. What I'm doing, yes, advanced billing would be nice. What I'm doing is saying, so I have one client that works in 2-week sprints, I have this client that works in 2-week sprints, I have a number of other clients that work in smaller increments. I basically just set aside weeks. If I have to, I'll set aside days. I don't go below the day. One thing that I will do sometimes is I will say, okay, My primary role this week is, for example, to deliver a strategic report to a library in London. And that is what I will be working on every day, and I'll do a full day of work on that. However, I know that I'm likely to get some interruptions. I also know that I'm likely to have an extra shift sometime between 5 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. when the kids get up. And those things are likely to come from this prospective client that I'll be talking with, this current client that's talking about rolling things out. So I will allocate that chunk for just sort of nursing that along and dealing with them. And if they bug me in the middle of the day, then I'll say, maybe wait till my lunch break, or I'll get back to you tomorrow. So does that answer your question at all? So the granularity is essentially a full day with a separate allocation of a little bit of slush around the edges if I have the time.
Thanks.
Which I'm almost never billing for, by the way. Right, that's
So
the
you're
other
not
piece.
in advance.
No. Other Chang, you had a question.
I was wondering, you said that the cowboy coding didn't work for you, but then these having Kanban board and following processes and tracking things in GitHub issues work for you. What exactly about that was can you talk more about what was working, what constitutes working and not working?
Sure, so what really worked was every 2 weeks, that forced us to say, here's how much development capacity we have this week, or this sprint. Here is a list of tasks that have already been prioritized by the stakeholders, not by me, and most especially not involving me in the process. And essentially filling up the sprint bucket in priority order until we filled up that capacity. Now, the great thing about that is that that's locked down, and I'm not having conversations with stakeholders all the way through the sprint about what we should be working on. They're not, the decision-making process of what should we work on next is not happening at the developer's desk minute by minute, because that kills you. It kills a project. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Damon,
So if someone were hypothetically going to quit their job,
right?
hypothetically, do you have any thoughts for that person, things you wish you would have thought of before you quit, or things you learned that just come to mind for that person?
There are some absolutely wonderful things about having a job. One of them is having an office, because you can hang around with people and get social interaction and not go insane. Another wonderful thing is a paycheck, which is also a very good thing. And honestly, the third wonderful thing is having coworkers. So here's the thing, doing open source development on your own, you have a lot of colleagues. There are people who are willing to talk to you about what you're working on, look over your source code in ways that has never been true for me in the corporate or startup world working on closed source software. I can't just go talk to a competitor working in the same domain and say, hey, what do you think I should build next? Whereas in the open source world, I can interview them. They want to talk to me about that. But in the corporate world, in the startup world, you have teammates, you have co-workers that are working on the same project with you, and if you get sick, they will fix that bug for you. Right? They've got your back in ways that colleagues, however smart, however giving, don't. So those are 3 things, I guess, to worry about beforehand. I don't know of anything else specific, right? The question about whether or how to quit your job is so situation dependent. I can't say anything.
Wait, okay, so you quit your job,
Yeah,
and then you went back to your job as a contractor a year later, half-time.
that's true.
So
So,
let's be honest here.
so the fact of the matter is that the thing that kills freelancers is vacancies, right? Once you get, so think about a hotel, right? If I could rent out my bedroom for $200 a night, I wouldn't have to work, right? That would be fantastic. And hotels can charge that, but they can't charge that every single day of the week. So the same thing is true with contracts. So right now I have one corporate client who's my former employer, who I work for about 2 weeks a month. Haven't been in there for about 6 weeks now, so don't know if they still want me back. I've got this client who's still going, and I've got a number of smaller clients. That is a great position to be in because you have the opportunity to turn down work and to say no, right? You're not at a lull, not sure where things are going to come from next, and willing to take bad deals, right? You have the opportunity to be picky and choosy, and you also have enough work that, frankly, the money is being paid every day at contract rate is really good. Not true all the time.
So you've ended up with just a handful of really solid clients that keep recurring. These guys you've worked for off and on for like 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
And the new client is probably going to turn into something you're going to work on for like 2 years. So you don't need a ton of clients to make this work.
Yeah.
But if you can find ones that have big projects and you develop really good, deep relationships with them, then you end up, you're a contractor for them, but you have just hit your on your own terms.
Right, and that brings me to another thing, which is how do you find real work during the potential lulls? And your best source of leads is to go back to your prior clients and say, how are things going? What are you working on now? Do you have any problems that I could fix? And oftentimes the answer is, please, yes, here, come on down. Any other questions? Yes?
Would you say that billing on a daily or weekly basis has an advantage of reducing vacancies, whereas like trying to fill up every hour of every day?
I can't imagine trying to fill up every hour of every day. It's very hard to do. Billing on a daily basis is wonderful, and it allows you to focus on delivering value. So in particular for this UK client, for my second pass of work with them, we switched over from American style billing, hourly and stuff, to the standard way of doing things in the UK, which is billing pounds per day. And a day is defined by law as 7 hours and 25 minutes in the UK. Which is kind of weird, but the point is, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I've delivered a day's worth of value to them. Now, if I have done amazing work and I have to go take my daughter to piano lessons, that's fine. If I've done pretty terrible work, well, I'll be working more than 7 hours and 25 minutes that night. But you're focusing on the product. You're focusing on what you've built and how it's useful, as opposed to, should I go to the bathroom now or not? Or can I take lunch with my friends because that would really cost me a lot of money if they order an extra appetizer or something.
So the other thing he's really good at, he set up a billing, how do we build?
FreshBooks?
It's FreshBooks, but they changed his name, cloud accounting or something like that. But he's very good at logging his hours at the end of every day, or logging his days, or however it ends up. And the first of the month, he sends out invoices to everybody, which, you know somebody a long time, I was blown away at how on top of this he is. So, how do you get paid though? You have to bill to get paid, right?
Any other questions for me or my wife, Sarah? No? All right.
Thank you. Awesome. So I really need to get into genealogy. I think that's the key. That's what I take away from that. Really need to get into this stuff. So, do I want to stay on here? Yeah, I'll stay here. So let's see. I'm cheating. I'm looking. I'm reading. Because, I don't do this that often. So, we're going to take a little break. But before that, let's talk about who is hiring. Who here wants to hire Rails developers? Damon is counting. Keep hiring. There you go, hiring. Only three people are raising their hand. 4? Anybody else? 4. Okay. Who is here looking for a job? Oh boy. Okay, who is here with a couple of years experience looking for a job? There's the one. There's the one. 10? Okay. So the other people who are looking to hire someone, you talk to not this guy, and you come talk to me. So we're going to take a little break. We're going to have a raffle for that box. I guess I'll let other people put their names in. I really want to win it. But you know, get more pizza, more drinks, restroom, socialize. If you are looking to hire someone, or if you are looking for a job, feel free to come up here and we can mingle. And then we'll start back up in about 15 minutes or so. All right? All right. Everybody get their name in the raffle? I'm not sure about this Brumfield family. There's 2 Brumfields in here. I don't know if I can allow that or not.
Yeah, you totally can.
You're doubling your chances.
If they're both developers.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Come on, man.
I didn't get in.
Okay, we'll get in. Get in. We're gonna go. Go.
The last one in is the one that you draw, right?
That's the first one that's eliminated. First one that's eliminated is the last name that's entered.
Here, I'll just go up there with your name somewhere.
All right.
Here, you go ahead.
All right. Did you hit enter at the end? Oh my God. We got the cursor off in the wrong
You go
spot.
last? Okay.
There we go. All right.
It's gonna be pretty exciting.
It's going to be exciting. And here's the thing.
Turn up the volume.
You know what? The sound didn't work earlier. I was so disappointed. So if it doesn't work, I want you to hum the song as we go. All right, are we good? All right, so if anybody wants to come to Share Through and interview for a job, you can put your name in here again. I'm kidding. Couldn't do that. All right, here we go. Let's see what we got. Oh, man. Oh, Adam's gone. First one out of the gate. Oh, man. It's good times.
You left it at 1500, so this is gonna take forever.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sarah.
Oh, we need better defaults.
You're right, you do.
It's the anticipation. The anticipation is what it's all about.
It's killing me.
Oh man. Oh. Oh, look at that. Sorry for that person.
Okay, turn up your volume now. This is a cool song.
There is no song. The volume is up, isn't it?
Oh no, did the song get broken?
It didn't play over. Oh my God, I'm still in there. I'm still in there. I've got this. Is this thing rigged? I honestly have nothing to do with that. You run it again? That's what it is. Okay, that's enough of the sound. Oh man. It's gonna be a party at my place tonight, that's for sure. It's hard to believe. Whew. Man, I've never been so excited in my life. Okay, so that was, where are we at? Hiring and looking, we did all that. Everybody bathroom break. Is there still pizza back there? Awesome. You can eat pizza. I don't want any pizza left over. Maybe I'll have a slice. And we do the raffle. Herd the cats. Love that. I shouldn't show this to everybody. They don't need to know that it says herd the cats.
Who knows what I said in there?
Yeah, sure. All right, so 8:15 to 9 p.m. Speaker number 2. Speaker number 2, are you ready?
I am.
Dude, you've got 1 whole minute to prepare yourself. Let me get disconnected here. And like I said, this is Mr. Brandon Hayes. He gave a really awesome talk at the Lone Star Ruby Conference, which most people didn't attend for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe it was announced 45 minutes before it was held.
Well, that was true. Yeah, you had to really be, like, if you weren't following them on Twitter or following me on Twitter, then you didn't know they were selling tickets because it was like 2 weeks before the thing when they started selling the tickets. I'm not sure how that happened. Anyway, sir.
Well, okay. Let's see. So who here is angry right now at Anthony, right? It was rigged. It was rigged. I didn't even enter the raffle, but I know that was rigged. So, how many people here are ready for this? All right, this is mirroring. I need to not do that. Let me see if that fixes everything. Oh,
That's better.
Probably going to go so badly for me. There's a key combination to. No, this is great. Okay. Oh wow, this is wonderful. Hi, I'm Brandon. I'm I'm here to dash all of your dreams about technology this evening. I'm actually here to end this meetup forever. I'm so sorry. We're here to learn about Dockerizing React containers, so forget everything you knew about web development. It's already over, sorry. My Tech Death Watch app just informed me that that technology actually expired just now. Sorry, forget everything I actually just told you. If you learned anything, please forget it. We're now talking about webpacking your CoreOS Kubernetes. Someone told me it's actually pronounced Corios, which I'm very down with. So yeah, anyway, hi, I'm Brandon. Thanks for coming to this thing. I actually want to talk about midlife crises. A midlife crisis is sort of a complicated psychological concept, but let's boil it down to recognizing your mortality and starting to make some rash decisions. This is my dad when he was just a shade younger than I am. He shares my enthusiasm for fanny packs. This is his brother and my dad's midlife crisis car. At school, I often got asked if my dad was like a drug dealer or something, and I don't know, actually. I don't know what was going on with that. He could have been. He had a cool ponytail. He looked like Steven Seagal. So I think we are getting to the point where we sit around and fixate on the mortality of the body of knowledge that we've gathered as web developers. And that leads us to start making some rash decisions. The web reinvents itself every 45 seconds. And it's tough to think past the next framework, the next feature that we're supposed to learn, or else we're going to become immediately and permanently unemployable. I'm Brandon. I help run the front side. I think we're doing some actually pretty special stuff over there. We're working on a catchy slogan so that people know who we are. I am open to feedback, but this is what we're going with. If I get no pushback. So I first noticed these patterns when I was learning Rails. And then the second time I noticed them was when I was learning Ember, and I'm like, oh, maybe there's some patterns here. Ember, as you know, is a client-side framework that was authored by a cartoon hamster. So let's talk about the state of web development today and explore that a bit. And I'm going to make a prediction. If you're trying to keep up with the pace of new tools, languages, frameworks, whatever, that prediction is pain. You're going to experience a lot of that. The first pain point is keeping up. I don't know who here webpacked their Docker files or gulped their whatever at this point. Like, why haven't you done all that stuff yet, right? Oh, you're still using npm2 to shrink wrap your React. That's adorable. So you just sit there and you stare at all these choices that are sitting in front of you, right? Like you're staring at the fridge, like hoping a meal will materialize in there somehow. Like, I'm supposed to, people are like, oh, you should have evaluated all these by now, right? And I haven't heard of half of them. Maybe I'm just getting too old, which is almost certainly true. Ember is about 3.5 years old now. Other frameworks have come along since then. A lot of JS frameworks have come along since then. I would like to know, first question, in what universe are there 24 top JavaScript frameworks? How are the 24 best of them? None of them are good. And it keeps coming at you like you're supposed to like run on this tech treadmill. But it seems like there's just like literally no way to win at this game. The second pain point is as soon as you have learned something, it's already over. So I don't know what your favorite technology is, but I got bad news for you. It died. According to Google Trends, everything you use is unpopular and also terrible. So let's take a moment to remember when Node shot down Rails at Framework Gulch at high noon. We'll see you at the Crossroads, Rails. What about MySQL? Sorry, that died so long ago. I think anybody that even remembers what that was in this room, hire them because they have 25 years of experience. Back when we still used relational databases, right? Those are over. Sorry, Oracle. Ask your grandma about those sometime. She'll remember. She probably worked with them. And also, I just want to lament the poor MySQL dolphin. And then my favorite front-end framework is Ember. But it got killed this year because some libraries came out. I guess it's time for me to shut my consultancy down and move on. All right. We hardly knew you, Tomster. I can still hear his squeaky little voice. Please, no, why? All right, so I think everybody will remember where they were the day they heard Ruby had died. Maybe it's here right now. I'm very sorry. It was off on Rails, yeah.
I mean, I think it was Lone Star, right?
It was, yeah, it was Lone Star. We had a big procession, and we threw roses on its grave. It was kind of somber for a Rails event. So anyway, the thing is, all of this stuff is totally predictable, and so predictable, in fact, that there is a chart for it. There's a company called Gartner. It gets paid a lot of money by a lot of very wealthy companies to chart where these tech trends fall on this cycle every year. It turns out once it's actually gained popularity, I got good news if you like some of those dead frameworks. It's actually harder to get rid of than Steven Seagal's toupee. Don't try though, he's still good at Aikido, I'm told. So let's talk about why this happens. We're trying to always get from a higher state of pain to a lower state of pain. So something comes along and addresses some pain that we're in, or in some cases creates dissatisfaction with our current tools. Quick story, like I went to Macworld in 2007. I didn't know the iPhone was coming out, but there were rumors. And I was there in the audience and he announces it, and I'm looking at my Motorola Q, which earlier that day was a totally fine phone, and now I look at it and I want to hurl it at the screen in disgust. So I have a new pain that my old tool that worked fine is now absolute and utter garbage, and it was true, it was garbage. I don't know why I was satisfied. So let's look at this cycle through the lens of Rails' history. And I want to thank Matt Buck because we went to lunch and he kind of talked me through some of the actual literal history of Rails. And the stories are really cool. I recommend you also take Matt Buck to lunch, just in general. I'll offer him 2 jobs. And learn more about Rails. And I went through Rails' blog at his recommendation, and DHH actually did a really good job documenting literally every single noteworthy and maybe not noteworthy event over the course of Rails' first couple of years of history, which is a tremendous effort. I think he doesn't get enough credit for how much work that actually was. So first I want to see if we can hear this. How many of you remember this?
Ruby everywhere. Look at all the things I'm not doing. That's how much work you have to do to get to Hello World. That's not a lot. Whoops, it worked. Whoops.
So, okay, raise your hands if you remember this. Okay, that's a very small percentage of this room. Okay, of the people that remember it, how many people it completely rocked your face? All right, it's it was universal. If you saw this back in 2004, 2005, 2004, it just completely blew your mind. Our lead developer at a place I worked, I was on the marketing team there. He saw that and he had an emotional meltdown. This guy was DHH was the Beatles of programming at that moment in time. Look at all the things he's not doing. He completely dropped a bomb on the entire web development world. And this is called a technology trigger. By the way, anybody that raised their hands, again, we're really dating ourselves here. Sorry to keep calling people old, but we have some old people in here. I wasn't even a programmer yet, but seeing that actually made me want to be one. I was like, wow, this is the kind of magic, incantations you can work if you learn to program. The trigger is marked by an explosion in Hacker News, and the tech analysts rip each other apart to present and rank and predict the future of the tools in this space. And the hype builds until it becomes, let's say, a little maybe ludicrous. So you start seeing things like, what? What is this? How did this? July 2006, wow. I'm sure he carries no shame about this having happened. So this is called the peak of inflated expectations. Ruby everywhere, getting started with Ruby. Rails and more Rails. Some Rails are not good enough, you need more Rails. That's the problem. You need to rub Ruby on all your problems and they'll go away, right? Whatever. Well, if only there was some wise member of the community that was prescient enough to predict this around that, I don't know, let's say RailsConf 2006, where they showed that same magazine cover. By the way, how many people recognize this? Oh my goodness. Okay, Matt is the soul. So Why the Lucky Stiff presented this at RailsConf 2006. And we'll get into a little bit of Why the Lucky Stiff later, but I recommend that you seek him out and seek out his work. Let's see, this might be too loud.
Right now, anything is possible with Ruby. First of all, it's unstoppable. The hype machine is totally rolling down the street. People have been trying to hit the brakes. The brakes on the hype machine are all burned out and they don't work anymore. And second, so many great projects have used Ruby that it's proof that you can do anything you desire. Any of your wildest dreams can come true.
I used Ruby to lure Catherine Zeta-Jones into my unicorn petting zoo.
You have a unicorn petting zoo?
Made entirely of Ruby.
Okay. Right? All of your wildest dreams are now possible with Ruby. It's 2006. The future is our oyster. Everyone writes a tutorial blog post and makes a name for themselves, and none of them actually help you, but that's okay. Conference talks in these, for this technology is standing room only. And once you do figure it out, the promise of productivity gains means you're finally going to ship web apps 10 times faster than you used to. And this means you'll finally wow your boss. You're gonna get the raise, like buy the car, buy the house, fulfill all of your wildest dreams. That's not the promise, but it's the one that we buy into. And all of these inflated expectations inflate our egos a little bit. A little bit, maybe a lot. So maybe you get on stage and tell an entire community to go F itself. Like everybody who came before you was completely wrong and you're the one that's right. Come on, cheat. Come on, the cheat. We're taking this baby to the moon. There's only one problem. Like drinking expired soy sauce, the fun doesn't last. And then you hit a thing called the trough of disillusionment. I didn't make this up. This is the real thing. Remember how Google Trends told us that our framework died? Well, there was much weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth as Node just smashed our lovely framework to bits. Again, if only somebody could have predicted this.
Mr. Mulsky, obviously some people here don't have your vast vision for Ruby, and I'm not sure even I understand the point of indulging these decadent wishes any further. You're just setting us all up for a huge crash when things don't pan out, and the idealism fades and the world moves on to the next language, something even more beautiful and expressive. I like to call this imaginary future language absinthe. A language smooth and creamy and scented with purest of licorice.
She's lying. Absinthe is the apocalypse.
She's got rabies. Keep the cure to ourselves.
She's going to steal our eigenclasses.
Only we didn't really move on to more beautiful languages. We kind of went on to worse languages, almost universally. Like, and we did, like, that's what I work in a language that's much worse than Ruby every day. So, and this phase is marked by prominent defectors. The thing that caused people to leave for your greener pastures is suddenly causing them to leave for other greener pastures. Go figure. Like, I don't know how many people remember this. This was sort of a watershed moment in the Rails community. Too bad this guy eviscerated Rails, and the consequences were just never the same. Like, this dude, in his blog post, offered to fight every developer. This is a bold guy. He just wanted to slam the door on the way out. And so obviously reeling from this unstoppable attack left the opening for Node to go in for the kill, and now Rails is dead forever, and this is the last I'll set on Rails, and I'll miss you all very much. We have to apply for Node.js jobs, or we're going to have to dress like this guy forever. So we get that Node job. So that's the amazing thing, though. Once the super early adopters kind of bail out and declare a tool dead, it starts getting to do some real work. And you know people are doing real work with technology when it has to speak XML across non-RESTful endpoints. Ugh. But that's where money is. So, and this is where the blog posts start turning into book deals. And a loose affiliation of enthusiasts starts turning into a real, like, lasting community. And all those enterprise dollars help buy race cars, and you are welcome, Mr. DHH. And finally, once you run up that slope, there's this plateau where a bunch of people become quietly productive with the technology, and they don't really see the need to talk about it too much anymore. And there's nothing exciting or cool about quiet productivity. You don't get any more magazine covers. It's been a decade since MySQL did anything that could remotely be considered cool. But you know what might be kind of, maybe sort of, a little cool? Is billions with an S. I think that's kind of cool. It doesn't matter whether Rails is a good technology or cool technology or bad technology. It's all irrelevant because it's an entrenched and productive technology. And now you're seeing the middle part of this process again with the idea of front-end frameworks. And there's a lot of argument about and a lot of churn in that word. For me, it was learning Ember. The initial spark of interest hits, same deal. A few early adopters jump in, and the Hacker News crowd comes in and like noshes on the news like piranha. And again, it doesn't matter if it's good attention or bad, it's off. And then at that point, see, I saw like 40 blog posts about Ember that were like, look at all the code I didn't write. Like, I feel like I've heard this before, I can't remember where. And we assume the new thing is gonna solve all the problems magically. This is where people that are new to Ember are astonished at how much they did with how little code. And I don't know if any of that sounds familiar. And it's the hottest thing in the world at that moment in time. And your time comes up. The rocket ride is over. And now it starts feeling like work. you get your prominent defectors and the wailing and the gnashing and the what have you. And if the tech does survive, you start seeing a light here at the end of the tunnel in this slope of enlightenment. The tooling gets better, the learning materials get better, the community starts stabilizing. And finally, you get to this plateau where a bunch of people become quietly productive and don't really see the need to talk about it anymore. And nobody on Hacker News is upvoting this. Where are these blog posts? I promise you will never see this on Hacker News. Yes, we've been quietly productive for 18 months. It's pretty nice. Like, oh my gosh, get off my webpage. Downvote, downvote. So these are the peaks and valleys of successful technologies if they make it out of the trough alive. And there are ways you can win and lose at this thing. Once you know this stuff, you can set yourself up for some awesome career success instead of being at the mercy of this cycle and watching things sort of destabilize and disappear around you. You can watch, if you want to lose, you can watch as your skills sort of become devalued and become commodities. You can burn yourself out trying to keep up with the new thing all the time. You can side with technology that doesn't really make it. You could actually opt out of this whole cycle and become a Fortran programmer punching cards, which is like literally still a thing people do for money. Good, really good money, if you're willing to find that niche. Or you can hack the Gibson here. There is a way to hack this treadmill. You can't be Gartner. Actually, I apologize for putting this on the slide. You actually can't do that. That's taken. Gartner did that already. And so that $7 billion is spoken for. But you could be a trainer or like a consultant during the peak. As an individual dev, though, if a tech doesn't crash in the trough, it's probably in your best bet, in your best interest to become productive with it. That's where the wins are. And it's all, like at this point, everything that you're trying to learn around this becomes total information overload. But once you understand your own preferences, you can focus your attention on where it has the most impact. So a friend recently sent me an article that articulates a theory that I've had for a while, which there are basically 3 dominant personality types among technologists: the pioneer, the settler, and the town planner. Pioneers itch for the latest technology. They like fording the rivers, they like contributing, they like exploring the new territory, and they are in it for the thrill of discovery. And then settlers look at what pioneers are doing and try to create order out of the chaos that the pioneers are going to find. They want to tame the wilderness, they want to connect that pioneering work with real business and user needs. And then the town planners look at that and go, well, I know how to scale that. They want to get things done at a scale, higher performance, that's just impossible with unproven tech. They're trying to take this exciting new thing and turn it boring, and they always win. So let's dive back into history to see how this all fits together. Now, my theory is DHH is not actually a pioneer. He's a settler that was pushed into pioneering a solution because he was so frustrated at the fact that it didn't exist. I doubt that he'd disagree that many of his ideas were borrowed and taken from more like true classic pioneers like Martin Fowler. Now, I moved to Austin from Utah a few years ago, and they love them some pioneers up there. You get a whole pioneer day. It's bigger than the 4th of July. Tech, we love our pioneers, and we celebrate them too. And when Rails fired that starting gun with the blog in 15 minutes, those pioneers showed up big time. And around pre-014 beta, which was like the release candidate for 1.0, Rails was actually already strikingly similar in look and feel to the Rails that you would use today. But you would die if you tried to use it. It would literally come out of the computer and kill you. And much less if you tried to deploy it. Anybody remember how to deploy a Rails application back in those days? Like, okay, what was it, Anthony? Fast CGI craziness.
Fast CGI was the way. I mean, that's how you did it. Yeah.
Your Rails server was probably under your desk. Yeah. Like with the cloud, kick. We actually had one under our desk. A guy, our lead dev named Rusty, had our Rails server under his desk, and you knew something was wrong because the phone would ring, and we realized Rusty had kicked the server, literally kicked the server under his desk. And people were calling to say they'd been billed 14 or 15 times. Like, sorry, worker got stuck, Rusty kicked the server. So email me your gem list. That's beautiful. Thanks, Matt, for reminding me of those days. Yeah. Free bundler, beautiful. And some poor schmucks even bet their companies on this unproven new technology. I wonder what ever happened to these clowns. Bye. We missed you wherever you went. By the way, these are all like super big companies. So this is a fun bit of retconning right here, actually. So Shopify This was not a demo store. This was their entire business. He's like, guess what? I'm Tobias Lukey. I sell snowboards, and I made it in Rails, and we're looking to extract it into a thing. And now he's a publicly traded quadrillionaire or whatever. So good for them. Like, that turned out to work okay. And then the settlers start moving in. People needed guides, they needed books, they needed supporting libraries, they needed educational materials and deploy tools, hosting services. And the settlers were all too happy to look at each one of those missing pieces as an opportunity to build something in open source for users, to build a business. And that really worked out. Back then, if you started in Rails 2.3 era, between 1.0 and 2.3, you might have had 9 gems, 10 gems that started with acts as something or other. Rails 1.2 introduced RESTful routing, which was like apparently like just an academic concept before then. And DHH was like, well, I like this, we're gonna do this. And now it's how the internet works. I don't know, I guess I'd be proud if that was my impact. And then I think we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to Ryan Bates for doing Railscasts. That was like a huge community service he performed for a really long time until it like nearly like put him into the ground. And I know I always had 2 or 3 tabs open to this site, and it's still something I refer back to periodically. So I'm super grateful to Ryan for that. More no-name startups throwing their futures into the black hole of unproven technology. Get a grip, hipsters! Buy Roku, Zendesk, whoever you are. New Relic, go home. GitHub, I never heard of them. You gotta love a service, though, that launches with the promise. Let's see if no, I don't know. That doesn't work. No longer a pain in the ass. That's your marketing copy right there. Like, you can launch a service and say, it's just not so much pain in the ass anymore, because that's what you get to do if you're a settler. You get to play with marketing copy that swears. Also, does anybody ring a bell? Hardcore forking action, never forget. If you don't get that, then GitHub is actually probably a better company than it was back then. Moving on. Rails was created to fight these architecture astronauts, and then they start moving in. Those people had fragmented and set up shop in Java culture and turned it from this like small talking in Wonderland that Java originally was in the like 99, 2000, and then they're starting to trickle into the Rails community. But the thing is, as needs grow more complex, those architectures have to adapt. And so these much reviled computer science folks take over the development of much of Rails at this point. They bring modularity and relational algebra, whatever that is, to active record. And the big money starts moving in at this point. And the Rails tent has to, by nature, get bigger. Includes things like code schools and enterprise needs. And at this point, really your bank and the startup disrupting your bank are using Rails. So every hacker school, all of Y Combinator, everything is Rails. So it's true, Rails and Ruby is like everywhere. We just don't talk about it as much anymore. So that's how these 3 archetypes kind of play into the growth pattern of a successful community. Everybody actually has all 3 of them in this sort of soupy mess inside of us. Like, oh, I don't know, I'm part this, I'm part that. But one is typically more dominant. So let's take a little quiz and figure out which one you feel like may be more dominant. So which of these irritates you more? Being required to use crufty old tools that your stupid boss who's over 30 makes you use? Team members that try to rewrite your code base in every single latest hipster stack, or anything that gets you in the way of you just shipping code. Which of these do you enjoy more? Do you like merging pull requests submitted to your own open source projects? Do you like applying a technology in a way that makes the company like real tangible money? Or do you like solving a tricky performance issue? And which of these makes you feel more helpful? Extracting a shareable library from one of your side projects to share with other people? Improving somebody else's documentation for a project that you like, or automating a tedious deploy process and making other developers more productive. So depending on which 1, 2, or 3, you might fall into one of these categories more strongly than the other. And all of these roles are super important. They require brilliant people at every stage. Pioneers experiment. They help define a sense of what the future could look like. Settlers connect that to real problems and opportunities, and town planners help scale that out to affect large numbers of people. Settlers and town planners might call the pioneers hipsters that are swept around by fad technologies. And pioneers often get mad at settlers for exploiting their work for notoriety or commercial gain. And town planners get called out for lacking a sense of adventure or being architecture astronauts when they're just trying to make things more stable, predictable, and scalable. All right, so this is sort of, okay, I'm gonna grant this is hilarious. I don't agree with the sentiment. As humans, we're wired to be dismissive of those that don't share our own default outlook. And we take each of these on at different points, but it's to our advantage to lean on the one that we're strongest at. Me personally, I perform best as a settler. I like connecting things together. So let's jump into a practical application using this to map out the cycle for your personality type. And you really only have to ask yourself 2 questions, because you can't get wrapped up in every single thing that comes down the pipeline. JavaScript people shoot frameworks at you faster than like an AK-47. It's crazy. When you feel obligated, though, to check something out, it seems notable. You just need to be able to answer, what stage is it in, and is this something I should concern myself with? Pioneers are best served by grabbing these interesting new things and jumping right in as soon as they seem very interesting. Settlers can hang back and just watch if they want, and planners should probably ignore it. At the peak, though, it's time for those pioneers to shine. This is where they make this is the money maker right here, folks. They get to train, consult, write blog posts, contribute, become a part of a core team. Settlers at this point can exercise some skepticism, but they need to keep an open mind. And town planners, again, do your work, get back to work. What are you doing looking at that new technology? They don't want to either. They'd rather ship with what they know. So once the tool cools off a little bit and it hits that trough and you see the prominent defectors start emerging, the pioneers can exit the ride if they want. They can change roles and stick it out, but they have to be cognizant of the fact if you are a pioneer and you ride this wave and you want to ride it out to the technology, you have shifted roles. You are now a settler. Now this is the time for settlers to come in and look at the technology more seriously, learn it, and the town planners again can kind of glance up from their work or go back to it. Now at this point, pioneers are super done. They have did their job. Congratulations. Hopefully you made a bunch of money in your consultancy that you had. The technology is now climbing the slope of enlightenment because the enterprising settlers are writing books. They're establishing longer-term consultancies, building products, and creating a support infrastructure around this technology. And town planners need to start running through some of those new tutorials that the settlers are putting out. And then finally, it reaches this plateau. And in the plateau, the technologies have become pretty low risk. It's in production, people understand how it works, it's becoming more scalable. Settlers can apply that now lower risk technology to novel business problems. And town planners can help automate and improve performance at this point. You're seeing this happen a lot with Rails right now, where most recent upgrades to Rails have been about security, performance, scalability. And that's for, you want enterprise scale solutions at this point. You have teams of hundreds of people potentially working on this technology. The toy solution is now running Fortune 500 companies and handling all of your bank transactions. All right, so you may be wondering when it's time to get off the plateau before you're stuck using old tech. Or maybe you're worried that your job will evaporate if you don't do something right now. Let's see if there's one lady here who's that lady right there on the left. Her job is apparently to hold the mobile phone receiver for that other lady. That job, I don't know, I don't see that on Craigslist anywhere. But you're not gonna get hired for that anymore. So if you're doing it right, you don't really need to exit. There's no big dramatic exit. You can relax a little bit. If you're experimenting periodically and keeping your eyes peeled and listening, you never really leave. You wind up finding yourself working toward a different plateau when you have a different set of problems to solve. You don't have a big blog post that you post to Hacker News and threaten to physically harm other developers. And there are solid ways to win here. The new tech brings competitive advantages, but also risk. If you're relatively early, reducing that risk is a great way to be marketable. You can succeed by bridging that. And a lot of what the front side does is that, taking relatively new technology, lowering the risk, and then bringing that to companies, and that's a marketable plan. As it matures, you need to connect its uses, its now slightly lower risk uses, with some novel ideas. This is where your Airbnbs and other Y Combinator companies come out. They can't afford to experiment with crazy novel technology that was invented day before yesterday, but they have to have, the technology has to be new enough to enable things that weren't possible a few years ago. And then late in the game, it's time to outscale and automate the competition, like an Amazon. One caution, I would say it's a good idea to avoid tech that targets that peak. And I'll give you a few hints of, in a moment, of things that might be signals for that. Some people really optimize their technology to maximize the impact that happens at the peak. They want, 500,000 views from Hacker News, and they think that's going to carry them through, and that never works. except if you're trying to raise a bunch of VC cash and disappear to Cabo San Lucas, then it does work. So depending on your moral boundaries, that actually might be a good idea. So you want to look for tech that has a vision that carries you all the way through to the plateau of productivity. So here are some warning signs that it's not. A tech that says it's sitting at the intersection of popular framework X and hot new language Y. And no, I'm not talking about Phoenix and Elixir. I actually think that's pretty cool. But it smells like that a little bit. When you do see that for real, it's a deal breaker. All right, when somebody says a slight variation on that, like it's a modular alternative to popular framework X, guess what? If it trades on the popularity of something else, that is a deal breaker. A tiny 5 kilobyte micro framework, you know what? I'm just gonna stop you right there. Shut it down, deal breaker. These pitches are not speaking to any intrinsic value or boost in productivity. They're not targeting the plateau. They're trying to appeal to that peak of the hype cycle. So with that in mind, let's say you're investigating front-end frameworks, which is essentially impossible. There are already people who will help you evaluate the real options out there and evaluate for specific criteria. So I want to focus on more of the philosophic angle and approach of applying these principles. Your instincts are actually probably pretty good by now. You'll be able to weed out the stuff that just sounds completely ludicrous and the stuff that's obviously targeting the peak. And you'll be left with a handful of front-running tools, which is super great. From that point, any of the frameworks can really be made to fit any of your use cases. That's God's honest truth. Like, you can just do anything with any of them, but you will benefit from picking the one that fits a more, that's suited for the strengths of the framework and the problem that you have at hand. Backbone, in terms of the hype cycle, is totally at the plateau. Has been for a while. If you've got a bowl of jQuery spaghetti and you can't truly refactor it into something else, Backbone has you covered. Ember is pulling out of the trough of disillusionment and up the slope of enlightenment right now. If you want to build a native-style web app from scratch against an API, it's got really nice Rails-like tooling. It aims to be a one-stop shop for building and maintaining an app over a very long period of time. If you have a server-rendered page that you want to augment with some functionality and keep the mental model really simple, React does a phenomenal job of that. It's got a third-party router and a growing tool set and community around that. And right now, React is so hot right now. It's at its frothy peak. It's at the peak of the hype cycle. It is a serious contender. It deserves your attention and experimentation, and it's actually had a big impact on the other frameworks as well. Angular entered the trough around the time they announced the 2.0, but it's pulling up the slope of enlightenment as well. But let's face it, it's already in your code base, so if you got it, no reason not to use it. And in terms of capability, all these frameworks seem to be converging on the idea of using components and stitching them together with a router. Picking for project fit, Backbone is probably pretty appealing for town planner types. You just need some organization around all the code that you were going to write anyway. Ember is ideal for settlers who want to leverage a community of more developers like them to build native web apps without writing a bunch of boilerplate and assembling a stack of build tools. Strong opinions, strong conventions, that paves the way for a really strong plugin ecosystem. And React is just exiting the phase where it was targeted at pioneers. And that's because it had some really wacky ideas, like really wacky, that you looked at them and were like, this is obviously stupid. And then it turns out that the ideas were pretty good. And other frameworks are busy Xeroxing those capabilities into their frameworks as quickly as they can. Currently, a lot of what React does is it has a small set of problems that it solves. It's really good at those, and arguably the most important parts about rendering things to your screen. But it's bring your own tooling, bring your own data, but the stuff that it does really well. Angular is great for settlers and town planners. Its job is to supercharge your HTML markup with some cool data binding and new primitives. With 2.0, it's looking a lot more like Ember. I think, again, these frameworks are sort of converging on a set of shared solutions. And then lastly, this sounds kind of like weird or hokey or difficult to do, but the personality fit of a whole community seems weird to investigate, but it's actually pretty easy. Just interact with a few community members, people that identify largely like they prefer one over the other, and you'll understand the philosophy of that tool pretty well. If you go to a couple meetups or interact online, you should be able to answer a single question. What do your smartest, nicest, most helpful friends use? I think the Ember community is super stellar. I help organize the Ember ATX meetup look us up on meetup.com. We have a meeting this Thursday. We're actually hope the React Meetup hasn't really materialized yet, but I hope that we get to, it will be here. We've offered to host it. Nobody's really organizing it yet, but I expect that to materialize over time as well. Don't do this, please. There's amazing code out there. Let's do our own. Or maybe do if you're like the world's itchiest pioneer. Wherever you land, though, you're to be congratulated. You picked a great tool that targets the plateau, and you have a toy app built in it. And you get off this post-tutorial high. It's not quite ready for production, but it works. But you have to come back down. The rocket ride ends. And you have this sort of personal journey along the same hype cycle. And the question is, do you stick it out with these technologies or not? Maybe you bought into the peak of inflated expectations, like the grass looks greener in other tech, because you compare the weakness of your chosen tech against the strengths of this cool new stuff that's happening. This is Jameson. He's a wonderful code philosopher guy and just really sweet dude. This shiny new thing has problems of its own. So the thing to do, open up Hacker News and pick whatever has the most upvotes. We've had some trouble with reliability lately, which is why it's time to rewrite everything in checks Hacker News. Failed Kickstarter projects. So do you stick it out? Do you head to Hacker News? What do you do? And the problem is this inflated expectations. The new stuff is awesome, but the trouble with buying in the peak is those pesky expectations. So you get stuck in a ditch again, and you already promised your boss something. You promised your boss you were going to do this in 3 weeks. And I don't know how many of you have had this happen, where you make a promise like, you feel like I have a 3-week proof of concept, and then it takes you 6 months or longer to get to production. And your proof of concept always winds up in production. It always happens, and you're like, yo, this is the same piece of software. Why is this taking so long? And your boss is like, why is this taking so long? And you're like, well, I'm a 10x engineer. Obviously, that's why it's taking so long. Check me out, 10x. Pay me. And the problem is your boss has conflated proof of concept and production. Which conflated, I don't know the difference between conflated and confused. I conflate those two. So once you demonstrate the velocity of those tools, people start expecting that output forever. Like, hurry up, we need the feature, or what's the holdup? And all you can think is, what happened? I used to go so fast. And personal exploration of tech. You hit this tutorial-driven high, and then, hey, it shouldn't be this tough. And hopefully you get to the plateau of continuous delivery. Why would you wade through the trough of disillusionment? Why go through all of this? Well, you pick the technology for your own curiosity, intuition. You feel like it's going to be the right thing. The reason to stick it out, in this case with client-side stuff, is the way our whole industry works out. The entire function of our industry is flipped upside down. We weren't watching. This happened, and we were not watching. We were in the middle of it. It's because we've been swimming in this avalanche to stay on top of the tooling. We didn't realize the fundamental shift that's occurred in our entire industry. User experience drives technology. So we have to have tools to manage this new world of UX-driven architecture. Client-driven UX is a thing. Deal with it. Ember is a mature and robust answer to this. Angular is a mature, robust answer to this. React is a maturing, robust answer to this. There are other tools out there. There will be more. I don't know how many of you have been doing this long enough to remember the idea of selling the idea of using jQuery to your boss. Please let me use jQuery. It will save so much time. And they're like, jQuery? I don't want to load stuff on my web page. It sounds completely bonkers now. And that's where client-side UX is headed. So Ember has crossed this chasm. How did that happen? Well, because sometimes, yes, it's really time to bail out. And some people manage to ride that wave profitably for the rest of their lives. That's not going to be you, most likely. The people that do that are few in number, and they are way too crazy to be in a meetup. And if you're trying to ship stuff, trying to do that can trigger an eternal mid-career crisis. Please don't try to do this. It will cause you such pain. If you notice this pattern in your work life, you might go, hey, wait, hold on, hang on, I got it. Okay, I got this technology. I almost had it. I almost shipped something. Ember has always been targeting the plateau of productivity. That's why I love Ember. It's why I knew that I was philosophically aligned with it. That's me. That's my philosophical alignment. You have your own philosophy. You've got to find that philosophical alignment. The ones that have staying power, like Rails, like Ember, like I believe Angular and I believe React, the jury's out on that, but I believe it does. They tend to push through that 15 minutes of Hacker News fame toward long-term productivity. I wanted so bad. The promise was going to change my life and fix all the problems and free me from all the hard stuff, and it's not true. It's not even possible. I bought into it though, because that's the cycle. And it even sounds like the promise at the time, and that's the one that everybody's talking about. But it is not the promise, so please don't fall for that. The real promise is about helping you reach that plateau. Because on the plateau, you have time to focus. You can focus on things that add value. Serious business value. Very serious. Look how much business value these people have added. We're just going to live with this. Look how much business value must have been generated here. These people shipped a very important feature. On the plateau, you have time to think. And you start thinking, maybe my boss is an idiot. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying you can think about it. And since you focus on business value, you can afford to fire your boss. Maybe go freelance. I really like Ben's talk. Thanks for sharing that stuff. There was a lot of truth in there. I hope you were paying attention. And then you do. You're like, oh, what happened? But you turn out okay. And you go have your own midlife crisis the way that you want to have it. That's another talk, though. Thanks, everyone. I'm stymied by this microphone.
Hold on the bottom button for a while.
All right, thanks.
Or just hand it to me. Awesome job. Awesome job. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Man, I love that talk.
Any questions?
Yeah, buy me a beer. Question? I don't drink, but buy me a beer and then I'll eat it. It'll be awkward, but we'll have a good time.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, this is like my favorite thing to do is like as MC one of these that I feel like went pretty well. 2 awesome talks. Thank you very much, Ben and Brandon. Thank you, Hired, for sponsoring and providing pizza. Next up, socialization practice at BD Riley's. You guys know where BD Riley's is? Down the hill, it's on 6th. Just follow everybody else that's going to BD Riley's. And thanks Capital Factory for hosting, as always. What else am I forgetting? Nothing?
You
That's
did
it?
it. Yeah,
That's it?
you're dumb.
Oh my God! I'll leave it here. Actually, I'm gonna give it to this guy because I feel terrible.
I'll give you one. We have it.
I feel terrible. I feel terrible for like being up here with the microphone and winning the thing. So Nick, it's totally yours. It's yours. You take it. I'm serious. If you don't take it, it's gonna be sitting here. It's yours. I should have not even put my name up there. I feel terrible for that. So anyway, thank all y'all for coming out. We'll do this again next month. It was awesome.